The world held its breath as a simple black car pulled away from the hospital entrance. Inside, wrapped in the finest cashmere blanket, lay a baby who would never know what it meant to be ordinary. Her first breath had been front-page news. Her first cry had made headlines across 7 continents. Before she could even focus her eyes, millions of people already knew her name, her weight, and the exact time she entered the world. This is not just another celebrity birth story. This is the tale of how one tiny person changed everything. From the ancient traditions of a 1,000-year-old monarchy to the very hearts of 2 people who never expected to become parents under the watching eyes of billions. It's a story of love, duty, sacrifice, and the extraordinary pressure of raising a child when the whole world is watching. What you're about to read happened behind palace walls, in hospital corridors, and in the quiet moments when cameras couldn't reach. It's the real story of how a royal baby's arrival shook not just a family, but an entire nation's understanding of what it means to be royal in the modern world. The morning of September 15 started like any other Tuesday for most people in London. Coffee shops opened their doors to sleepy commuters, red double-decker buses rumbled through narrow streets, and Big Ben chimed its familiar tune across the Thames. But for Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, this Tuesday would be unlike any other day of her life. She woke at 4:30 a.m. with a sharp pain that made her gasp. William, still deep in sleep beside her, didn't notice as she quietly slipped out of bed and padded barefoot across the cold marble floor of their bedroom at Kensington Palace. The pain came again, stronger this time, wrapping around her middle like a tight band. Catherine pressed her hand against the ornate wallpaper and breathed slowly, the way she had practiced in those private birthing classes that no one outside the royal circle knew about. For months, every detail of this day had been planned with military precision. The hospital route had been mapped and remapped. Security teams had run countless drills, even the specific entrance they would use at St. Mary's Hospital had been chosen to avoid the crowds of photographers and royal watchers who had been camping outside for weeks. But now, in the quiet darkness of early morning, Catherine realized that no amount of planning could prepare her for the raw reality of bringing a new life into the world. The contractions were still 20 minutes apart when she finally woke William. He sat up instantly, that look of protective alertness that had become second nature to him since their wedding day. Without saying a word, he helped her time the contractions while she paced the length of their bedroom, past portraits of long-dead royals who seemed to watch from their gilded frames. By 6 a.m., the palace was quietly buzzing with activity. Catherine's private secretary made discreet phone calls to the medical team. The head of royal protection coordinated with hospital security. William called his father, who was already awake and waiting for news at Clarence House. The Queen, following royal protocol, would be informed once Catherine was actually in active labor. The media had been on high alert for days. Outside the hospital, photographers from around the world had set up a small village of tents, cameras, and satellite dishes. News anchors practiced their royal baby announcements in a dozen different languages. Betting shops across London were taking final wagers on everything from the baby's gender to their first name to the exact time of birth. But inside the palace walls, the moment felt surprisingly normal and intimate. Catherine took a long shower, letting the warm water ease her tense muscles. She dried her hair carefully, knowing that every photograph taken today would be analyzed by millions of people. William made her favorite breakfast, toast with honey and chamomile tea, though she could barely eat a bite. The decision to leave for the hospital came at 8:30 a.m. when the contractions shortened to just 8 minutes apart. Catherine changed into a carefully chosen blue dress, one that would look appropriate for the cameras, but comfortable enough for what lay ahead. William helped her with her earrings, his hands shaking slightly as he fumbled with the small clasps. The ride to the hospital was surreal. From the back seat of their unmarked black Range Rover, Catherine watched London wake up around them. People walked dogs, grabbed newspapers, hurried to work with coffee cups in their hands. None of them knew that just a few feet away, separated only by bulletproof glass, A future heir to the throne was about to be born. The convoy of security vehicles moved smoothly through the city streets. William held Catherine's hand tightly, both of them lost in their own thoughts. This was not their first child, but somehow it felt different this time. Perhaps it was because they now understood the weight of royal parenthood, the impossible balance between protecting their children's privacy and fulfilling their public duties. When they arrived at St. Mary's Hospital, the crowd of waiting journalists erupted. Cameras flashed like lightning, even though the car's tinted windows revealed nothing. Catherine took a deep breath as the vehicle pulled into the private entrance. The next time she emerged from this building, she would be a mother of 3, and the royal line of succession would have a new member. Inside the hospital, the staff moved with practiced efficiency. Catherine had delivered her previous children here, and she felt comfort in the familiar faces of the medical team who had become like family over the years. Dr. Alan Farthing, the royal surgeon gynecologist, greeted them with his calm, reassuring smile. The midwives who had attended her previous births were waiting, ready to guide her through what was to come. The private wing of the hospital had been transformed into something that felt more like a luxury hotel suite than a medical facility. Fresh flowers filled every room, though Catherine knew they had all been carefully screened for security purposes. The windows offered a view of London's skyline, but they had been fitted with special privacy glass to prevent any telephoto lenses from capturing unauthorized images. William changed into scrubs, looking oddly formal even in the casual medical clothing. He would stay by Catherine's side throughout the entire process, just as he had for their previous children. The palace had learned from past royal births when fathers waited in other rooms while their wives labored alone. Modern royal fathers were expected to be hands-on partners, not distant observers. As the morning progressed, Catherine's labor intensified. Between contractions, she and William talked quietly about their hopes for this new addition to their family. They discussed practical things, which nursery room would become the baby's, how they would tell their older children, when they might take the traditional photographs on the hospital steps. But they also shared deeper thoughts about raising a royal child in an increasingly complex world. The media attention surrounding royal births had grown exponentially since William's own birth in 1982. Social media meant that every detail would be shared instantly across the globe. The pressure to present the perfect image of royal family life had never been greater, even as Catherine and William tried to give their children as normal an upbringing as possible. Dr. Farthing checked Catherine's progress regularly, his decades of experience evident in his calm demeanor. The royal medical team had handled the births of princes and princesses for generations, but each birth still carried its own unique risks and responsibilities. The health and safety of both mother and child were paramount, but they also carried the weight of national expectation. By noon, Catherine was in active labor. William pressed cool cloths to her forehead and whispered words of encouragement that no microphone would ever capture. These were their private moments, away from the cameras and the protocol, when they were simply a husband and wife bringing their child into the world together. Outside, the crowd had grown larger. Royal watchers from around the world had joined the permanent media presence. Some had been camping for days, surviving on takeaway coffee and excitement. Police barriers held back the curious crowds, while security teams monitored every entrance to the hospital. The palace press office prepared multiple statements for different scenarios. Birth announcements had been drafted for both a boy and a girl. Photographs would need to be arranged. The official notice would need to be posted on the gates of Buckingham Palace, continuing a tradition that stretched back centuries. Inside the delivery room, Catherine focused on her breathing and the encouraging words of her medical team. William never left her side, occasionally glancing toward the window where London stretched out below them. Somewhere out there, people were going about their ordinary lives, while here, in this quiet room, something extraordinary was beginning. The afternoon sun slanted through the privacy glass as Catherine's contractions grew stronger and more frequent. The moment they had all been waiting for was approaching. Soon, the careful plans and preparations would give way to the beautiful chaos of new life, and nothing would ever be quite the same again. This was more than just the birth of another royal baby. This was the continuation of a story that had been unfolding for over 1,000 years, written in the lives of ordinary people who happened to be born into extraordinary circumstances. And as the afternoon wore on, that story was about to gain its newest, most precious chapter. The first cry pierced the quiet of the delivery room at exactly 2:47 p.m. For a moment, everyone froze as the sound echoed off the pale blue walls. Then, the room burst into gentle activity as Dr. Farthing lifted the tiny, pink baby into the air. William felt his knees go weak as he saw his daughter for the first time, her small fists waving indignantly at being thrust into the bright, cold world. Catherine reached up with trembling arms as the midwife placed the baby on her chest. The little girl was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair that reminded William of his mother's baby photographs. Catherine's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at this newest member of their family, this tiny person who would carry such enormous responsibility on her small shoulders. The medical team worked efficiently around them, performing all the routine checks and procedures that follow every birth. But there's nothing routine about this moment for Catherine and William. They counted fingers and toes like any new parents, marveled at their daughter's tiny fingernails, and laughed when she opened her eyes and seemed to stare directly at them. Dr. Farthing announced that both mother and baby were healthy and doing well. The baby weighed 6 pounds, 8 ounces, a perfect size that would be reported in newspapers around the world within the hour. Her birth time would be recorded not just on a medical chart, but in the official records of the royal succession. William called his father first, his voice thick with emotion as he shared the news. Charles was waiting by the phone at Clarence's house, and his joy was evident even through the formal language required by their position. The Queen would be told next, following the strict protocol that governed even the most personal moments of royal life. Within minutes of the birth, the palace machinery began to move. Private Secretary Sir Christopher Geidt was notified immediately. He would coordinate the official announcements that would spread the news around the world. The traditional easel was prepared for placement outside Buckingham Palace, where thousands of tourists and royal watchers would gather to read the formal birth announcement. But inside the hospital room, the wider world seemed very far away. Catherine held her daughter close, studying every detail of her tiny face. The baby had William's nose and what appeared to be Catherine's eye shape, though it was too early to tell for certain. She was alert and calm now, looking around the room with the serious expression that newborns often wear. William sat beside the hospital bed, one finger gently stroking his daughter's cheek. He thought about his own childhood, growing up in the constant glare of media attention. He and Catherine had already made decisions about how they would try to protect their children's privacy while still fulfilling their royal obligations. But sitting here now, looking at this vulnerable little person, the challenge seemed more daunting than ever. The baby would be fourth in line to the throne, after her grandfather Charles, her father William, and her older brother George. She would grow up knowing that her life belonged not just to her family, but to the nation and the Commonwealth. Yet in this moment, she was simply their daughter, completely dependent on them for everything. Catherine attempted to breastfeed for the first time, with gentle guidance from the midwife who had helped with her previous children. The baby latched on immediately, a good sign that she was healthy and strong. William watched in amazement, still processing the reality that he was now a father of 3 children. Outside the private wing, hospital staff went about their normal duties with professional discretion. Everyone who worked in the Lindo wing had signed strict confidentiality agreements. They had been chosen not just for their medical expertise, but for their ability to provide care while maintaining the absolute privacy that royal births required. The head of royal protection coordinated with hospital security to ensure that the building remained secure. Every person entering or leaving the hospital was carefully monitored. The airspace above the building had been restricted to prevent unauthorized photographs from helicopters or drones. Even the hospital's own staff were limited in their access to the private wing. As word of the birth began to spread through official channels, preparations intensified for the moment when Catherine and William would emerge from the hospital with their daughter. This tradition, started when William himself was born, had become one of the most photographed moments in royal life. Every detail would be scrutinized, from Catherine's appearance to the baby's outfit to the exact way William held his daughter. The palace's communications team worked with major news outlets to coordinate coverage. Live television feeds were being set up outside the hospital. Photographers adjusted their camera settings for the evening light that would greet the royal family when they emerged. Royal correspondents prepared their live reports, ready to analyze every gesture and expression for clues about the family's mood and the baby's health. Inside the hospital room, Catherine was helped to freshen up. Her hair was brushed and styled by a trusted aide who had traveled from the palace. Makeup was applied carefully, enough to ensure she looked healthy and radiant for the cameras, but not so much as to appear artificial or overdone. Every choice was deliberate, designed to project the right image of royal motherhood. The baby's first outfit had been chosen weeks in advance. A simple white cotton romper and matching hat, elegant but not ostentatious. William would wear a suit and tie, projecting the image of a proud new father while maintaining the dignity expected of a future king. The other royal children, George and Charlotte, were at school, carefully protected from the media attention surrounding their sister's birth. They would meet their new sibling later, in the privacy of Kensington Palace, away from the cameras and crowds. The palace had learned from previous royal births about the importance of allowing older siblings to adjust to new family members without public pressure. As the afternoon turned to evening, Dr. Farthing made his final checks of both Catherine and the baby. He declared them both healthy and ready to go home, though he cautioned that they should take their time. There was no medical reason to rush, and the emotional intensity of the day had been enormous for both parents. Catherine nursed the baby one more time before they prepared to leave. The little girl was sleeping peacefully now, completely unaware of the excitement she had already caused around the world. News of her birth had broken records for social media engagement. Newspaper editors were remaking front pages. Television producers were extending news broadcasts to cover every detail of the story. The baby's name remained a closely guarded secret. Catherine and William had made their choice weeks earlier, but they wanted to take her home and spend time as a family before making the announcement. Royal names carried enormous significance, often honoring past monarchs or beloved family members. The choice would be analyzed and debated by royal historians and casual observers alike. William carried the car seat, specially fitted with the highest level of safety equipment available. The baby was secured carefully inside, her first journey as a member of the royal family about to begin. Catherine walked slowly beside him, still recovering from the birth, but radiant with the joy of new motherhood. The hospital staff lined the hallways to wish them well, maintaining professional discretion, but clearly moved by the privilege of being part of this historic moment. Some had attended previous royal births and felt a personal connection to the family. Others were experiencing their first royal birth, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they had just witnessed. As they prepared to leave the private wing and face the waiting world, Catherine took one last look around the room where her daughter had been born. Tomorrow, this would just be another hospital room. But today it had been the site of a miracle that would resonate through British history for generations to come. The elevator doors closed, carrying the new family of 5 toward their first public moment together. Outside, the crowd was growing restless with anticipation. Soon, the waiting would be over, and the world would get its first glimpse of Britain's newest princess. The elevator descended slowly toward the hospital's main entrance, carrying Catherine and William toward one of the most scrutinized moments in modern royal history. Through the metal doors, they could hear the distant sound of the crowd that had gathered outside. Hundreds of voices, camera shutters clicking like mechanical rainfall, the electronic hum of television equipment, and the general buzz of excitement that surrounds any major royal event. Catherine checked her appearance one final time in the elevator's polished walls, smoothing her hair and adjusting the pale blue dress that had been chosen specifically for this moment. The color was significant, royal blue for a royal birth, but soft enough to convey the tender nature of new motherhood. Every detail of her appearance would be analyzed by fashion experts and royal watchers within minutes of her emergence. William held their daughter carefully, supporting her head with the protective instincts that had grown stronger with each of his children. The baby was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that she was about to become one of the most photographed people in the world. Her tiny white outfit was pristine, chosen for its classic simplicity and the way it would photograph well against William's dark suit. The head of royal protection spoke quietly into his radio, coordinating the final security arrangements. Police had cleared a path through the crowd, but the sheer number of people pressed against the barriers was unprecedented. Royal births had always drawn crowds, but social media had amplified the excitement to levels never seen before. People had traveled from across Britain and around the world just for the chance to witness this historic moment. The hospital's public relations team made final arrangements with the media. Camera positions had been assigned weeks in advance, with the most prestigious spots going to the major British broadcasters and international news agencies. Photographers adjusted their lenses and checked their equipment one last time. This would be the most important photograph many of them would ever take. The elevator reached the ground floor with a soft chime. Catherine took a deep breath, transforming from a new mother into a public figure with a grace that had made her one of the most admired royals of her generation. William straightened his shoulders, preparing to present his family to the world while protecting them from its intensity. The hospital doors opened, and the sound hit them like a wave. Cheers erupted from the crowd as Catherine and William appeared, walking slowly down the steps that had become sacred ground in royal tradition. The same steps where Princess Diana had presented William to the world over 30 years earlier, where Catherine herself had emerged with George and Charlotte. Camera flashes created a strobe effect that was visible even in the late afternoon sunlight. Professional photographers worked frantically to capture every angle, every expression, every gesture. Television cameras broadcast the scene live to millions of viewers around the world. In living rooms and offices on phones and tablets, people stopped what they were doing to witness this moment of history unfolding. Catherine moved with careful grace, her smile genuine despite the overwhelming attention. She had learned through years of public life how to maintain her composure under the most intense scrutiny. William stayed close beside her, one protective hand hovering near her elbow, ready to steady her if needed. The baby remained asleep through the chaos, her tiny face peaceful against William's chest. Some in the crowd called out congratulations, while others simply stared in wonder at this newest member of the royal family. Children waved small British flags that their parents had brought for the occasion. Tourists held up phones, capturing personal memories of this unprecedented access to royal life. Royal correspondents provided live commentary to television audiences around the world, describing every detail of the family's appearance and demeanor. Expert commentators analyzed the significance of Catherine's dress choice, speculated about the baby's possible names, and drew comparisons to previous royal births throughout British history. The planned photo opportunity lasted only a few minutes, but it felt much longer to Catherine and William. They waved to the crowd, answered a few shouted questions about how they were feeling, and allowed the photographers time to capture the images that would appear on front pages around the world the next morning. A reporter called out, asking if they had chosen a name yet. William smiled diplomatically and said they were still deciding, though they had actually made their choice weeks earlier. The palace preferred to announce royal names in their own time, usually within a few days of the birth, allowing the family time to settle before making such an important declaration. Another journalist shouted questions about how the baby's older siblings were adjusting to their new sister. Catherine's smile grew warmer as she briefly mentioned that George and Charlotte were excited to meet the baby when they returned home. She deliberately kept her answers brief and general, protecting her children's privacy while acknowledging the public's natural curiosity about royal family life. The baby stirred slightly as a particularly loud cheer went up from the crowd, but she settled back into sleep almost immediately. This natural composure in the face of noise and commotion would later be cited by royal watchers as an early sign of her suitability for the public life that awaited her. Security personnel maintained their professional vigilance throughout the appearance, scanning the crowd for any potential threats while trying to remain unobtrusive. The royal family's safety was always the top priority, even during these carefully planned public moments. Every person in the immediate area had been screened in advance, but the sheer size of the crowd created its own security challenges. Palace staff watched from inside the hospital, monitoring the scene and ready to intervene if anything went wrong. The press secretary stood ready with prepared statements in case any unexpected questions arose. The royal communications team observed how the moment was being covered by different media outlets, already planning how to manage the story in the days to come. After what felt like an eternity, but was actually only about 10 minutes, Catherine and William began to move toward their waiting car. The crowd's cheers grew even louder as they realized the photo opportunity was ending. Cameras clicked more frantically as photographers tried to capture those final images. The walk to the car was carefully choreographed to provide the best possible angles for the waiting photographers while ensuring the family's safety. William opened the car door for Catherine, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that would be noted and praised by royal traditionalists around the world. The baby was secured carefully in her car seat, a process that took several minutes and provided additional photo opportunities. Catherine and William worked together with the practiced efficiency of experienced parents, but the simple act of putting a baby in a car seat became a moment of global significance under the watchful eyes of the world's media. As their car pulled away from the hospital, Catherine and William finally allowed themselves to relax slightly. The first major public hurdle was over. They had successfully presented their daughter to the world while maintaining their dignity and protecting their privacy as much as possible under the circumstances. Behind them, the crowd began to disperse, though many lingered to discuss what they had just witnessed. Photographers reviewed their images, selecting the best shots to transmit to newspapers and websites around the world. Television crews prepared for extended coverage, analyzing every detail of the brief appearance. The royal baby's first journey as a public figure had begun. In the back seat of the secure vehicle, Catherine and William held hands as they watched London pass by the windows. Soon they would be home at Kensington Palace, where they could finally begin to adjust to life as a family of 5 away from the cameras and crowds. But even as they savored these private moments, they knew that this was just the beginning. Their daughter's life would be shaped by the unique demands of royal duty, the constant balance between public service and personal privacy, and the weight of representing the monarchy to the world. The hospital steps grew smaller behind them, but the moment that had just taken place there would be remembered and referenced for decades to come. In living rooms around the world, people were already sharing the images on social media, discussing the baby's appearance, and speculating about her future role in the royal family. History had been made on those hospital steps, not just because another royal baby had been born, but because the way it was shared with the world represented something new in the relationship between the monarchy and its people. This was royal tradition meeting modern communication, centuries-old ceremony adapted for the digital age. The Black Range Rover wound through the familiar streets of London as Catherine and William made their way home to Kensington Palace with their newest family member. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Hyde Park, and the normal bustle of city traffic seemed almost peaceful after the controlled chaos they had just left behind at the hospital. In the back seat, Catherine gazed down at her sleeping daughter, still amazed by how perfectly formed she was. Every tiny feature seemed miraculous. Her delicate eyelashes, the way her small hand curled around Catherine's finger, the gentle rise and fall of her chest with each breath. This was the quiet wonder that no camera could capture, the private joy that belonged only to family. William glanced in the rearview mirror, catching glimpses of his wife and daughter while navigating through the security escort that surrounded their vehicle. He was thinking about his own childhood, remembering the mixture of privilege and pressure that had shaped his early years. He wondered what kind of world his daughter would inherit, how the monarchy would evolve during her lifetime, and what challenges she would face as a royal in an increasingly complex global society. Their route took them past some of London's most historic landmarks, places where generations of royals had lived, worked, and made decisions that shaped British history. The Tower of London stood solid and ancient beside the Thames, a reminder of the monarchy's turbulent past. Westminster Abbey, where William and Catherine had been married, where future coronations would take place, rose majestically above the surrounding buildings. The baby stirred slightly as the car turned into Kensington Palace, but she remained asleep. The palace grounds felt like a sanctuary after the public intensity of the hospital. Here, behind the high walls and security gates, they could simply be a family without the constant awareness of being observed and analyzed. Staff members had been preparing for their return throughout the day. The nursery had been freshened with new flowers and equipped with everything needed for a newborn. Security had been subtly increased around the palace, though it was done so professionally that visitors and passers-by would hardly notice the enhanced protection. George and Charlotte were waiting in the main drawing room with their nanny, Maria. They had been told that morning about their new sister's birth, and both children were bursting with excitement to meet her. George, now old enough to understand the significance of having a sibling, had spent the day drawing pictures to welcome the baby home. Charlotte, still young herself, was simply excited about the idea of a baby in the house. Catherine felt a familiar tug of emotion as she thought about how this birth would change the dynamics of their family. George and Charlotte had enjoyed being the babies for so long, and now they would need to adjust to sharing their parents' attention. She and William had talked extensively about how to help their older children feel secure and loved even as they welcomed this new addition. The car pulled into the private courtyard of Kensington Palace, away from any public view. William carefully lifted the car seat containing their daughter, while Catherine gathered the few personal items they were bringing from the hospital. Palace staff stood ready to help, but they maintained a respectful distance, understanding that these first moments at home should belong to the family. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was one of quiet celebration. The staff who had served the family for years smiled warmly as Catherine and William passed through the corridors. Many of them felt personally invested in the family's happiness, having watched George and Charlotte grow from babies into confident young children. The reunion with George and Charlotte was everything Catherine had hoped it would be. Both children approached their new sister with a mixture of curiosity and reverence, understanding instinctively that this tiny person was someone very special. George gently touched the baby's hand, marveling at how small her fingers were compared to his own. Charlotte wanted to help with everything, from carrying the baby's blanket to choosing which stuffed animal should go in the nursery. William watched his children meet their sister for the first time, remembering his own childhood and the unique bonds that form between royal siblings. They would grow up sharing experiences that very few people in the world could understand: the pressure of public life, the weight of tradition, the constant balance between duty and personal desires. The nursery at Kensington Palace was a study in understated elegance. Painted in soft yellows and greens, it was designed to be calming and comfortable rather than ostentatious. The furniture was a mixture of antique pieces that had been used by previous generations of royal children and modern equipment chosen for safety and functionality. Catherine sat in the comfortable nursing chair that had been placed by the window, offering a view of the palace gardens. The baby woke and began to fuss, and Catherine was grateful for the privacy to feed her daughter without the pressure of performing for cameras or maintaining a public image. This was motherhood in its purest form, the intimate connection between parent and child that transcended titles and positions. William helped settle George and Charlotte into the evening routine, reading them stories and answering their endless questions about their new sister. Both children wanted to know when the baby would be old enough to play with them, what her name would be, and whether she would like the same games they enjoyed. The palace staff worked quietly around them, preparing dinner and ensuring that the family had everything they needed for their first night home with 3 children. The chef had prepared Catherine's favorite meal, knowing that she would be tired and need nourishing food to help with recovery and breastfeeding. As evening approached, the family gathered in their private sitting room. The baby was awake now, alert and looking around at her new environment with the serious expression that newborns often wear. William held her carefully, talking to her in the soft voice that fathers use with their tiny children, telling her about her new home and her family. Outside the palace walls, London continued its normal evening rhythm. People were heading home from work, restaurants were filling up with dinner guests, and theaters were preparing for evening performances. Most Londoners went about their normal activities, though many paused to check their phones for updates about the royal baby or to read the special editions that newspapers had rushed to print. The traditional announcement had been posted on the easel outside Buckingham Palace hours earlier, where crowds of tourists and royal watchers gathered to read the formal notification of the princess's birth. The simple, elegant wording followed centuries-old protocols while announcing one of the most modern royal births in British history. Television news programs continued their extended coverage throughout the evening, with royal experts analyzing everything from the timing of the birth to the significance of the hospital steps photo opportunity. Social media buzzed with shared images and congratulatory messages from around the world. But inside Kensington Palace, the focus was on the simple, profound reality of a new family member. Catherine and William began to establish the routines that would shape their daughter's earliest days: feeding schedules, sleeping arrangements, and the careful balance of attention that would ensure all 3 children felt loved and secure. The baby's room had been prepared with all the latest safety equipment, but it also contained touches that connected her to royal history. A christening gown that had been worn by previous generations of royal babies hung in the closet, waiting for the ceremony that would formally welcome her into the Church of England. Family photographs lined the walls, showing grandparents and great-grandparents who had shaped the family she was born into. As bedtime approached for George and Charlotte, both children were reluctant to leave their new sister. They had spent the evening taking turns holding her under careful supervision, marveling at her tiny fingernails and the way she seemed to focus on their faces when they spoke to her. Catherine and William tucked their older children into their beds, answering final questions about the baby and promising that they would all have breakfast together in the morning. The transition from a family of 4 to a family of 5 was happening more smoothly than they had dared to hope. Later that evening, as Catherine nursed the baby one more time before attempting to settle her for the night, she reflected on the extraordinary day they had experienced. From the early morning labor pains to the public appearance on the hospital steps to this quiet moment in the nursery, every hour had brought new emotions and new realities. William checked the security systems one final time, a habit that had become second nature since becoming a father. The protection of his family was always his first priority, and adding a new member to that family only intensified his awareness of their vulnerability and the constant need for vigilance. The palace grew quiet as the family settled in for their first night as 5. Outside, security teams maintained their watch, ensuring that the royal family could rest peacefully. Inside, 3 children slept under the same roof, each destined for a life of service and duty, but for now simply beloved children in a family home. 3 days had passed since the princess's birth, and Kensington Palace had settled into a new rhythm. The initial excitement and adjustment period was giving way to the more sustainable routines that would carry the family through the coming weeks and months. Catherine was recovering well from the birth, finding her strength returning with each passing day, though the sleepless nights reminded her of the challenges that came with newborn care. The baby had proven to be remarkably calm and content, sleeping well between feeds and showing the kind of temperament that experienced mothers recognize as a blessing. She seemed to study the world around her with intelligent eyes, already showing signs of the alertness and curiosity that would serve her well in the unique life ahead of her. William had taken paternity leave from his official duties, a modern approach that would have been unthinkable for previous generations of royal fathers. He spent his mornings helping with the children's breakfast and school preparations, his afternoons in family time, and his evenings sharing night feeding duties with Catherine. The palace staff were struck by how hands-on he was as a father, reflecting the changing nature of royal family life. George and Charlotte had adapted to their new sister more easily than anyone had dared hope. Both children had claimed special roles in helping care for the baby. George as the protective big brother who made sure her blankets were always properly arranged, and Charlotte as the little helper who insisted on being present for every diaper change and feeding session. The name announcement was scheduled for this morning, and Catherine felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness about sharing their choice with the world. They had selected Charlotte Elizabeth Diana, honoring both William's beloved late mother and the Queen, while choosing Charlotte as a name that felt both traditional and contemporary. The decision had been made months earlier, but saying it aloud for the first time still gave Catherine chills. The palace communications team had prepared for the announcement with their usual attention to detail. The name would be released through multiple channels simultaneously to ensure fair access for all media outlets. Royal correspondents have been speculating about the choice for days, with betting shops offering odds on various possibilities. At 11 a.m. precisely, the announcement was made. Within seconds, the name Charlotte Elizabeth Diana was trending on social media platforms around the world. News outlets updated their websites and social media feeds. The choice was universally praised for its respectful tribute to Diana, while maintaining royal tradition through the inclusion of Elizabeth. The public reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Diana's admirers were deeply moved by the gesture of including her name, seeing it as William's way of ensuring that his mother would always be part of his daughter's identity. Constitutional experts noted the significance of including Elizabeth, connecting the newest princess directly to the current monarch and the continuity of royal succession. Catherine watched the news coverage from the comfort of their private sitting room, Princess Charlotte sleeping peacefully in her arms. The positive reaction to the name choice brought tears to her eyes, knowing how important it was to William to honor his mother's memory while looking toward the future. Phone calls came throughout the day from family members and close friends offering their congratulations on the name choice. The Queen called personally to express how honored she felt to have her great-granddaughter carry her name. Prince Charles was emotional as he discussed how meaningful it was to have Diana remembered in this way, ensuring that future generations would know her importance to the family. The first official photographs were scheduled to be taken the following week. These would be more formal than the hospital steps images, showing the princess in traditional royal christening attire and capturing the family together in the elegant surroundings of Kensington Palace. The photographer chosen was someone who had worked with the family before, someone they trusted to capture intimate family moments while respecting their privacy. Princess Charlotte's first week at home passed in a blur of feeding schedules, family adjustments, and the gradual establishment of routines that would carry them through the months ahead. Catherine marveled at how quickly the household had adapted to accommodating a third child, though she knew that the real challenges would come as Charlotte grew and developed her own personality and needs. The christening plans were already being discussed, though the ceremony would not take place for several months. The Church of England expected royal children to be baptized in traditional fashion, and the location, guest list, and ceremonial details would all need to be carefully planned. The christening gown that had been worn by previous generations of royal babies was being carefully examined and prepared by palace staff. William found himself thinking often about the legacy he wanted to leave for his children, particularly for Charlotte as a daughter who would grow up in an era of changing expectations for women in the royal family. Recent changes to the succession laws meant that daughters now had equal claim to the throne as sons, reflecting broader societal evolution toward gender equality. The media attention gradually shifted from the intense focus of the birth announcement to the more sustainable interest that would follow Princess Charlotte throughout her life. Newspaper editors and magazine publishers planned special issues featuring the new princess. Television documentaries about royal babies throughout history were commissioned to capitalize on the continued public fascination with royal family life. International reaction to Princess Charlotte's birth had been remarkable in its scope and warmth. Messages of congratulation arrived from heads of state around the world, from Commonwealth nations, and from ordinary people who felt personally connected to the royal family. The birth had generated positive news coverage in countries where the British royal family served as symbols of stability and tradition. Catherine began to think about returning to her official duties, though she would take a longer maternity leave than many working mothers could afford. Her role as a senior royal meant that when she did return to public life, every appearance would be analyzed for signs of how motherhood had changed her or how she was balancing family responsibilities with royal obligations. The nursery staff at Kensington Palace worked seamlessly with Catherine and William to ensure that Princess Charlotte would receive the best possible care while allowing her parents to maintain their close involvement in her daily routine. This was a more hands-on approach than previous generations of royals had typically taken, reflecting contemporary parenting philosophies about the importance of parental bonding and involvement. Security arrangements were continuously reviewed and updated to account for Princess Charlotte's presence in the family. The threat assessment teams analyzed potential risks and developed protocols for protecting a royal infant while allowing for as normal a childhood as possible under the circumstances. This was an ongoing balance that would evolve as Charlotte grew and began to appear at public events. The gift room at Kensington Palace overflowed with presents sent from around the world to welcome Princess Charlotte. Everything from hand-knitted blankets from elderly admirers to elaborate silver rattles from foreign dignitaries arrived daily. Each gift would be carefully cataloged and acknowledged, though security protocols meant that only items from trusted sources could actually be given to the baby. Educational plans were already being considered, though Charlotte's schooling was still years away. Catherine and William were committed to giving their children as normal an education as possible, following the path they had established with George by choosing schools that would challenge their children academically while protecting their privacy and allowing them to develop friendships with classmates from diverse backgrounds. The family's first public appearance together as a family of five would come at Charlotte's christening, an event that would be carefully choreographed to allow the public to see the growing family while maintaining appropriate dignity and security. Planning for such events required months of preparation and coordination between multiple agencies and departments. As Princess Charlotte completed her first week of life, she remained blissfully unaware of the attention her birth had generated or the extraordinary life that lay ahead of her. In the quiet moments between feeds and diaper changes, she was simply a beloved baby daughter, sister, and granddaughter surrounded by family members who were determined to give her as much normalcy and love as possible. The story of Princess Charlotte Elizabeth Diana had truly begun, not with her birth announcement or her first public appearance, but with these quiet days at Kensington Palace where she was learning the rhythms of family life and beginning to develop the bonds that would sustain her through the unique challenges and privileges of royal life. Catherine and William looked toward the future with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, knowing that they were raising a child who would help shape the future of the British monarchy. But for now, they were content to focus on the simple joys of new parenthood and the wonder of watching their family grow and flourish in the privacy of their home. The world would continue to watch and speculate about Princess Charlotte's future, but inside Kensington Palace, she was simply Charlotte, a much-loved daughter beginning her journey through a life that would be unlike any other, but would hopefully be filled with the same love, laughter, and family bonds that sustain children everywhere.